Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 796. My opponent started off with d4 and I went with knight f6, which can introduce all kinds of different systems, including the Grinfeld. I think that's what I was aiming for, but also Nimzo Indian, King's Indian, other things. And white disrupts my plans immediately with this bishop g5 move. So c4 would be a normal continuation and knight f3 the second choice, avoiding a lot of main lines, but bishop g5, the Trompowski attack. So anyway, yeah, it's a way to get different positions on the board. And the main move by black here is this knight e4 move, which I played. A funny move, but just kicking the bishop back, and white will have to waste a move chasing this knight around a little bit. The knight eventually goes back, but first the bishop has to move. And normally it goes there. Let's back up. And then I would also play d5. You see that c5 is the top choice in the database, but I've always found the d5 type positions to be easier to play. c5 is a sharper move and maybe a good choice for a fighting continuation. Anyway, my opponent in the game went bishop h4, the other line, and you still see that c5 and d5 are main moves there. I go with d5, and then he went with e3, which is a pretty quiet continuation. Knight f3 just developing is fine, and for a fighting game you could play with f3 here, and there is this line where you can play g5 supported by the knight and kicking the bishop back, and that leads to this exchange and a completely crazy position on the board on queen takes. So yeah, I like to avoid positions like that. So I probably would have played something quieter here. If he went f3, probably just dropping my knight back is what I would play. But anyway, he went e3. And then I went bishop f5. You see, we're basically out of the opening book, but g5 is still an idea here, as well as c5. Those are the only two moves listed in the database. But I just wanted to play a developing move. The chess engine prefers this knight c6 move. It thinks that's the best developing move. But bishop f5 is not bad either. And this should lead to some kind of normal position where white has that usual slight opening advantage. Well, white does have a slightly unusual structure. He's pushed forward with the f-pawn. And he's got this bishop here guarding the diagonal, and it has a nice retreat square. So there's no real weakness on the king side caused by moving that f-pawn forward. And he always has the idea of playing e4 to push me back. So I do have to be a little bit careful. Right now he can't play it, but he starts to prepare the e4 move by playing knight d2. And I went h6 so that I would have the move g5 in order to break the pin, so that I could play the move e6. But, well, the chess engine points out I could actually play e6 right away. And I'll show you what I was worried about. I was worried about this line. He could push the pawn forward, and I think this is also the chess engine line in this position. Force my bishop back, and then, you know, I saw that he could push this pawn forward and take advantage of this pin here, and I don't have any way to attack his bishop. But there is a problem here, which is if he actually plays e5, I can play queen takes d4, and so well, my knight is hanging, but his bishop is hanging too, and my knight is unpinned. So if he does anything to save the bishop, I can just move my knight away, and if he does anything to, if he takes my knight, I take his bishop. So so the line I was worried about was really nothing to be afraid of. The chess engine actually would continue knight to f3, holding on to the pawn, and then bishop e7, breaking the pin that way. And this is also an okay position for black. So, you know, it's not like h6 was a horrible move, but it was unnecessary. It's the kind of move you shouldn't play unless you really need to. In this point, he decided to go ahead. I am threatening to chase the bishop back, so he decided to go ahead and exchange the bishop for the knight, which is an interesting choice. It's not necessarily the best move, but it was one of the top engine choices, and it leads to a imbalanced position, which I think is what players who play the Trompowski are kind of hoping for, a little bit of imbalance. So I have the bishop pair, and I have doubled pawns over here, but those pawns are not necessarily weak. They are well supported here. They're not coming under attack, and they control some squares in the center here near my king as well. So black's position is very solid here. Now let's see, he goes on with e4. I take, he takes, and just drop the bishop back. Let's see, he goes knight to f3, and I go bishop d6, developing my bishop, and also I want to restrain his pawns from coming forward. And he plays c4, an interesting and aggressive looking move, but actually the chess engine gives black an edge after that. So from the beginning to this point, you know, white has that usual opening advantage. And the chess engine would continue with knight h4, just winning back the bishop pair basically, or chasing the bishop back. So it seems like a slight edge to white after that. But after c4, now there's a slight edge to black. Not a huge edge, but it's like the opening advantage has switched from one side to the other. So I played with c5 here. I was still a little worried about those pawns coming forward. The chess engine is much more relaxed, and it would just castle here. And if c5, the bishop goes to f4. Just, you know, looking at it in a blitz game too, and you don't have time to calculate long lines, looks a little bit scary. Looks like maybe this bishop could get chased around here. There's not so many squares it could retreat to, and white can take those squares away with pawn pushes. So it looks like it's in danger of being trapped. But at the moment, of course, it can always trade itself out for the for the knight. So I guess there's going to be time to rescue that bishop one way or another, and so that's how the chess engine would play it. I just played c5. This also keeps the edge for black. In fact, so aside from that one inaccuracy on move 11, it's both sides are playing a good game, and it's just that the lead switched from one side to the other because of that one move, and now I have a slight edge for the next 10 moves or so. So actually a pretty well played game. No blunders in the next 10 moves. Let's see, he pushes on. I castle. He plays bishop d3, so we're just completing our development. I go rook e8. I guess part of the reason there's no blunders here is that the moves are pretty straightforward at this point. No complicated lines here. Just getting my pieces out and putting them on the normal squares. He goes a3. Maybe he's looking for some ideas of advancing on the queen side here. I go knight e5, putting my knight on a good square. Drops his bishop back to c2. I go a6. I'm thinking of advancing on the queen side as well. He goes knight h4. And I decide to let him grab that bishop. I mean, he had a good knight there, so I don't mind if he's trading it off for my bishop. So I just went to rook b8, continuing with my ideas of planned expansion on the queen side. He does take the bishop. And I took back with the knight. I like this pawn structure here. I don't want to take with the pawn, and that pawn structure would be a little weaker. It would have there would be at least a weakness on e6, and the pawn on g6 might become a target. I mean, I could push it forward, but then it would be a diamond of pawns on the dark squares. I'm not sure if that really complements his bishop or not. Let's see. He went rook b1, and I pushed on with b5, and he just left it there. He moved his king to h1 so that if this diagonal opens up, at least I don't get any checks there. I put my knight back on e5. He goes b3, holding on to the center. I decide to, or holding on to the queen side pawns there. I decide to go ahead and trade at this point. And he took back with the knight. And, you know, if he took back with the pawn, I think that was playable as well. I would just try and get some pressure against that pawn. So taking with the knight is kind of an interesting choice. Leaves me with some isolated pawns, but it leaves him with a backwards pawn as well. So, like I said, all of this seems to be staying in the range. I keep trading so that this pawn is shielded. He trades rooks. Oh yeah, I trade rooks. He takes. I go queen a5. So yeah, all of that sequence of 10 moves is, well, even more than that, from move 11 up to move 24. Neither of us really made any mistakes, and black is keeping some slight edge. Looks like white has some ideas along this diagonal, but it doesn't look to me like he can really accomplish that much. And also this pawn is pretty well restrained, so his only way to open that up that diagonal at the moment is to sacrifice a pawn, and it looks like he won't get enough play to justify that sacrifice. Let's see. So here, yeah, it's white's turn. He went queen b3, and well, this gave me a chance to activate my queen. I went with queen d2, and this looks like a good choice here. It led to some interesting complications. The chess engine says that rook d1 is a slight mistake, and basically the way to keep it in the range of about even is queen d3, and chasing my queen away. I don't want to trade queens. I want to keep some activity, and then g3. And again, slight edge to black, but no immediate breakthrough. So that's the way to handle this position from the chess engine point of view. He went rook d1, chasing my queen, but the queen takes up another square over here on f2, which is pretty decent. Let's see, he went queen to d3, and of course he is now threatening to push that pawn with a mate threat, so I do have to worry about that. Actually, I take it back. It's not a mate threat, but it could be dangerous. The check, king runs here, check again, the king comes out. Particularly if he's opened up this e-file, it might be dangerous. So I just played g6 here to make sure that that pawn push doesn't come with tempo. It was also hitting my bishop. So, and then right here he makes the, is this a critical mistake? Well, this is a slight mistake. Queen drops back to d2, chasing my queen away, but once again my queen has a good square, and yeah, actually the chess engine starts to give a winning advantage to black at this point. So the combination of the rook d1 move on rook d1 on move 26 and queen d2 on move 28 changed the situation from being slight edge to black to basically winning for black. He just doesn't have a good response here. There's that mate threat, and he needs to move the g-pawn out of the way to deal with it. He has no other way to defend, and if he moves the king, of course, I'll come crashing in. So the chess engine's top choices were the moves g3 and g4. I was surprised by g4, but like I said, it was one of the top moves and rated about the same as g3. Of course, with g3, I also win the pawn. So same material, but slightly different configuration after g4. It pulls my queen away from attacking his h-pawn, and so anyway, yeah, the chess engine gives black about a +2 advantage, has ever since he played queen d2, because I was pretty much forced after that queen d2 move. I did queen h4 and he has to respond. So he's losing some material. But the way he played it with queen takes h6 is actually leads to a forced mate. Kind of funny. But yeah, the queen goes off sides and he doesn't have enough counterplay over here. Let's see, the chess engine would play like this. Rook g1, queen to f3 check. He could block with the queen, try and line up against g3, and the chess engine just boldly takes the pawn over here at a3. He's not worried about the sacrifice on g6. I would worry about it. What happens if white plays here? Take the pawn and then he takes here. Kind of mysterious. If I take, it seems like he might get some perpetual or something like that. Anyway, I would be a little nervous about snatching that pawn, but in any case, it seems like white has an advantage, a pawn up, and a good position. But queen takes h6 just loses immediately, and one way to win is bishop f4. His queen just has no good squares, so that's a pretty straightforward way to win. I didn't see that idea, but I did notice that I could play rook takes e4, and he couldn't take back, or if he did take back, cancel that. If he did take back, then I would take the rook. And he resigned at this point, and I had not really seen anything further, but it actually is a forced mate at this point for black, so he wasn't really resigning too soon. The chess engine gives this line as the best, actually. Bishop takes, queen takes, and certainly this is looking pretty good. Yeah, I don't actually, I still don't see the forced mate in this line. But they do say, when you've got the your bishop of opposite colors and you're attacking, you have the advantage. This bishop guards his diagonal. The king has to come out. maybe queen here causes some trouble. Notice that his queen is protecting the h7 pawn, so I can't just check along this rank and then try and take there because this queen's got that covered. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't see the mate here, but anyway, I do see that that's a good position for black. Maybe just returning to this idea is the way to win from that position. You give that check to get your queen back to guarding all the escape squares, and now his queen is trapped once again. So that's one way to win, and that's if he goes for the taking. But what if he just retreats his queen? You know, get the queen out of trouble so it's not in any, so there's no problem there. Then you have this move. And this move, notice that the bishop is coordinating with the rook on that square. So this loses the queen, or if the queen moves, there's a mate in one. So that leads to some devastation pretty quickly. And then another thing he could try is rook to g1. But then there's this check with queen f3, rook g2, and then the rook comes back to the back rank and mates that way. So anyway, after rook takes e4, this was the final position. He resigned, and apparently it wasn't too soon, although I didn't see all of those lines during the game. It's pretty interesting that I guess it's the fact that his king is so exposed and all my pieces are active and his queen has wandered away leads up to a winning attack. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon. Bye.